Finally, we reached the last episode and the last video of this series. This has been one hell of a roller coaster, but it's not over yet. If you watched my last video, you'll know there will be significant changes to this rewrite of episode 6. But before we start, I just want to thank everyone who's been watching. This has been exhausting, and I appreciate everyone who takes the time to watch these videos. Like always, first impression criticisms come first, so let's get started so we can be done with it. First criticism, Reva. I already knew this was coming through spoilers, but watching was an experience. In the first video I made about this series, I wondered how young Reva survived a lightsaber injury without any immediate medical attention, and I'm still asking that same question. How the fuck was she able to chase Luke through the desert with essentially a hole in her stomach? I am baffled. I looked Qui-Gon's death up, who died of the exact same wound. I found this 3-minute and 14-second video of his death, and 4 seconds in, he receives the fatal injury. 3 minutes and 9 seconds in the video, he dies, which means it took this Jedi that is labeled a master 2 minutes and 28 seconds to die of his injury. The same injury Reva has received twice now. What the actual fuck? Second criticism, the timeline. While Kenobi fights Darth Vader, it shows Reva attacking the Lars family and chasing Luke through the desert. After Reva has a change of heart, she carries Luke back, again with an untreated injury to our knowledge, and Kenobi is there. Every review that I've watched has complained about this, and I gotta say, this is just shoddy work and insulting to the audience. Third criticism, the back and forth between Reva hunting down Luke and Kenobi fighting Vader. It took away from the final fight. Fourth criticism, the poorly made up excuse as to why none of this was ever mentioned in the very first film. Everything is quiet on the ship. Leia fidgets that catches Kenobi's attention, and she tells him that she wants to ask him something, as has been on her mind for a while. Before she can ask, Roken calls Kenobi over to talk. He tells him that their hyperdrive is damaged and that the Imperial destroyer is approaching. Kenobi is stunned as he's unsure how they could have tracked them so fast. As he ponders, the only variant he can think of is Reva. The civilians feel uneasy with Reva on the ship, but her being in another room helps keep them calm. Kenobi searches through Reva's belongings. Reva wakes to him rummaging through her clothes. Before anyone says anything, Kenobi is not doing an unconsensual search on Reva. When they treated her wound, they obviously had to take most of her uniform off to get to the wound. You can also perceive that as a symbolism of her breaking away from the Empire. I don't have anything. They don't give. Kenobi explains the situation and asks how they could have found them. Reva asks if he still has her lightsaber. He pulls it out, and all that needs to be exchanged are glances. Kenobi quickly leaves to inform Roken. Reva breathes through the pain and makes it known she knows who's there. Leia emerges and the two awkwardly stare at each other. Reva breaks the ice. Do you hate me? I don't know. Do you want to hurt me? No. Then you don't hate me. You're just angry, and that's okay. My parents always make me apologize, saying it's the right thing to do. Sometimes it makes me angry to do it, but the anger always goes away, right? Yes? Good. Never let it stay for too long. I honestly never planned for Reva and Leia to have a in-depth conversation like this, but after the rewrite of episode 4, that takes place in the Empire Fortress, it felt necessary to give these two characters closure. Kenobi enters the room and informs both of them of his plan. Before the Imperial ship catches up to them, Kenobi will leave with Reva's lightsaber. This should buy Roken the necessary time to fix the hyperdrive. Leia is immediately against this, and so is Reva, as she is well aware of the type of mission this is. Leia runs off, and Reva urges Kenobi to go after her. When Kenobi finds her, he ironically finds her tucked away in a corner. This looks familiar. I know running away doesn't make the problem go away, but at least it stalls it for a bit. Why does it have to be you? Because this is my responsibility, and I'm tired of running away. Leia finally asks if Kenobi is her real father. Kenobi is caught off guard by this. She hysterically tells him what the fifth brother said, and how she noticed Kenobi's reaction to the mention of Padme's name. She concluded that the real reason he was sent was because they wanted her to be with her real father. Leia had convinced herself this had to be the case and wanted desperately for Kenobi to confirm it. She confesses that her current parents have been nothing but good to her, but because she's adopted, she doesn't feel that she'll ever belong. Kenobi says nothing, but instead shows her the message he received the same day she was kidnapped. He tells her how he too was somewhat adopted, and while he did cherish his new family, sometimes he did think about his previous one. It's okay to think about the past, but don't let it distract you from what you have right now. Leia stares at the hologram of her parents and cries out that she wants to go home. Kenobi hugs her and assures her that she will. If you're wondering what the difference is between her saying she wants to go home in this scene and the rewrite in episode 4, the difference is in episode 4, she wanted to get away from the danger. That's what she meant when she said she wanted to go home. But in this scene right here, she truly does want to go home to her parents. Just thought that I'd clear that up. I always knew that I wanted this to be more emotional than what was in the show. Truthfully, I've been struggling to figure out where to put it. I knew that when this conversation arose, it would be when Leia was at her lowest or most insecure. Obviously, this would take place after her conversation with the fifth brother, who fueled her already existing insecurities. And naturally, children jump to their own conclusions when they're not corrected. The thing that kind of bothered me a little in the show was how quickly they dropped this off after just briefly mentioning this without really giving Leia any real confirmation that yes, the Organas love her with all their hearts and would do anything for her. As Kenobi prepares to leave, Reva states that she's going with him. Kenobi objects as it's clear she's in no condition to be moving. I have no one waiting for me and nowhere to go. The only reason these people took me in was because of you. She's not exactly wrong. Unfortunately, Kenobi has no argument as he does feel responsible for her circumstances. Roken promises to return Leia home as they say goodbye. Part of Reva's motive to leave with Kenobi is because she doesn't trust anyone. She's been used, abused, and lied to. As a result, she has no reason to trust anyone, and that does extend to Kenobi. He was the one that triggered it. However, it's clear what little trust she does have, she gives to Kenobi. But there's no doubt that it is fragile. The scene where the Imperial Destroyer is attacking the Rebellion ship just really doesn't make sense to me. Mine's probably no better, but I just thought it would be a little more convincing if the ships weren't in view of each other. I can't remember where I'm recalling this from, but I remember watching a sci-fi movie, and in the film, the protagonists kept themselves from being located by turning the ship off. I don't know if the same rules apply in the Star Wars universe, but if it did, that would really help the scene out, especially if there was some type of debris or something that the Rebellion ship could lay low on until the Imperial ship follows Kenobi away from them. Kenobi and Reva arrive on a deserted planet. He does his best to land the speeder somewhere where it won't be seen, to keep Reva safe. He instructs Reva to leave if he's not back after a certain amount of time. I already told you I have nowhere to go, and even if I did, what would I do? I did terrible things that I knew was wrong. How am I supposed to live in this world after what I've done? The same way Tala did, by forgiving yourself. Before Kenobi leaves, Reva requests her lightsaber back. He pauses at her request, unsure of her reasoning, but realizes her motive. He wishes to deny her request, but knows he has no right to. He reluctantly hands it to her and asks her to give it some thought. Well, that got dark. I honestly didn't intend to word it like that, but it just kinda happened, and I'm not sorry for it. Vader arrives and makes his way to Kenobi. The fifth brother stays on the ship, but something draws him away. Student and teacher finally meet again, face to face.
Finally ready to face me.
I'm here to stop you.
Does that mean you'll actually stick around and do it yourself?
They draw their sabers, take their stance, hold for a moment, and then charge. Upon the first blow, it's clear to both that neither are holding back. I didn't notice this until rewatching. Maybe I'm just nitpicking, but Vader was the second one to arrive, and I think that's a deserted or desolate planet they're on, so the line,
"Have you come to destroy me?"
doesn't really hold any weight. Also, with their brief conversation, I kind of wanted there to be some shade throwing because it kind of was shitty of Kenobi to just stand there and watch Anakin burn. Obviously, he did deserve it, but still, no one would let something like that go. Reva staggers her way out of the speeder with saber in hand. She leans against a boulder, readying herself, but then hears the shifting of rocks. She knows who it is before ever laying eyes on them. The fifth brother emerges and is ecstatic to see Reva in such good health. He draws his saber and Reva tightly grips hers. Do you honestly think you'll gain anything bringing the head of a whipped dog? I'm not doing this for him. The fifth brother takes a step towards Reva and she quickly uses the force to push him back. However, using the force agitates her injury and she had to stop. The fifth brother wastes no time and charges at her, forcing Reva to use the force again, exacerbating her injury further. The fifth brother lets go of his saber and uses the force on it. Reva transfers her concentration on his lightsaber, allowing him to move freely again. There's no hiding how weak she's getting the further this drags on. The fifth brother takes great joy in this and comfortably walks towards Reva as he continues to push his saber closer to his target. Reva feels her wound opening as warm blood seeps out. She knows there's no time left. The fifth brother inches closer and he stops as he's just a few feet away and calls her Jedi trash. Reva unexpectedly feels comfort being called that. Her use of the Force grows weaker and finally she can't hold it back any longer. She allows his saber to pierce her, distracting him as she uses what's left of her strength and shoots her own saber at him. He was too close to have any ample time to respond. He can't see where her saber hit him, but is surprised to see that she's still alive. His saber pierced his shoulder instead of her chest. He doesn't understand why he's fallen, but he doesn't have to think about it for too much longer. This may have been what she wanted, but she's slightly disappointed that it was by his hands. At least he went first. Originally, I didn't know what I was going to do with the fifth brother, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought it would be fitting if these two characters had some kind of final showdown, given that these two characters had the most hostility towards each other out of all the other characters, and it seemed to keep growing as the show went on. But the question was, how can they have a showdown when Reva can't move or shouldn't be moving? Despite the Disney Star Wars movies having their issues, there were things that I did like. The tug-of-war between Rey and Kylo was the only thing that I liked about The Last Jedi, and I figured, why not reverse it? Kenobi struggles to keep Vader at bay. He knew he would be stronger, but didn't realize how strong. Vader's control of the Force is unprecedented, while Kenobi still struggles to use the Force at his full capabilities. Despite his disadvantages, Kenobi does seem to have one thing over Vader: patience. It seems that Vader's has diminished over the years. Vader's relentless attacks forces Kenobi to exert himself. He seeks cover among the boulders, but it backfires as Vader uses them in attempts to crush him. Kenobi's flushed out and Vader collapses the ground beneath his feet. At first, Kenobi panics as Vader attempts to bury him alive, but he quickly regains his composure. As he desperately keeps the rocks back, images of his life flashes, from recent memories to his oldest, particularly the day he met Qui-Gon Jinn. I honestly didn't think too much of this the first time I saw it, but the more I thought about it, the more I wanted something more. We see throughout the entire series Kenobi is meditating, trying to get in contact with his master, and it's even verbally stated with Yoda that he would teach him to be able to talk to his master.
In your solitude, training I have for you, your old master. How to commune with him, I will teach you.
Throughout the entire show, I kept waiting for something to happen with that. I wanted a scene similar to Harry Potter, when Harry speaks to Dumbledore one final time. This feels like a missed opportunity because this scene was the most opportune moment to do this. I think it would be interesting if it first started out as a memory, but then transferred into a conversation with adult Kenobi and his master. The memory with young Kenobi shifts into his current self and finally asks if he knew what Anakin would become. I knew he was capable, but believed with guidance it could be different. So it was I who failed. Perhaps it was I who failed, or perhaps this was always meant to be. Regardless, there's no need to hold on to such regrets. He hasn't, and it's made him stronger. Qui-Gon begins to fade, alerting Kenobi that the conversation is reaching its end. Before Qui-Gon disappears, Kenobi voices his concern that he still might not be able to do what he failed to do all those years ago. With a smile, his master replies that perhaps this is someone else's destiny. I have no idea if this is remotely close to what Qui-Gon would say in this situation, but the thing that I kinda noticed with Jedis and mentor characters in general is that they never give you the full answer. They give you half the answer and then expect you to figure out the other half on your own, and that's what I based this conversation on. To Vader's surprise, Kenobi emerges from the hole he believed to bury him in. Upon contact, the change in his former master is unmistakable. No words need to be spoken, the intent is clear. The fight escalates quickly, exhausting them faster, but neither refuses to relent. Kenobi has turned the tables as he is now the one consistently attacking while Vader struggles to keep up. In the chaos, Kenobi manages to land a hit, damaging Vader's mask and respirator. Kenobi is taken back, unsure of his next move. It was easier when he couldn't see his face or look him in the eye. Emotions bubble to the surface as Kenobi struggles to follow through. Upon hearing his name, Vader makes it clear that is not who he is anymore. His eye glows, revealing his true nature. With a heavy heart, Kenobi finally accepts the truth and readies himself. He takes his stance, but is troubled when Vader begins to laugh. It's only when he stops does Kenobi feel what he's about to do. Everything that's been bubbling to the surface since he first laid eyes on his former master is unleashed. Kenobi braces himself and even tries to push back, but it's overpowering. He's thrown the distance of several yards and finally the tantrum subsides. Spent, Vader waits for Kenobi to finish it as he can feel himself fading. He notices that Kenobi's silhouette's fading into the distance. I really wasn't too sure how to go about ending the fight. Obviously, Kenobi has to be the victorious one because that's what's hinted in the film.
When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
But if that's the case, why is Vader still alive? That was one of the most asked questions about the series. I know the Jedi have a code they fight by. This was shown when Palpatine told Anakin to kill Count Dooku, but Anakin at first refused because he was unarmed. Vader was still armed in the fight. He was just incapacitated to an extent. but it was clear that he was still dangerous. When it was clear that Kenobi had every intention to finish the fight, I honestly don't think Vader would be angry or upset by this, but more elated. I'm not sure if I'm using the right word, but I'm going with it. It's clear Vader doesn't want to be killed and unleashes a substantial amount of force which takes what's left of him out, especially since his breathing apparatus was damaged. As for Kenobi, this is not an anime. There's no way in hell he's going to be able to carry on after being tossed around. Also, there's that code. Kenobi's not going to attack an unarmed person, let alone an unconscious one. Limping, Kenobi makes his way to the speeder, unsure of what he'll find. He's surprised to find the fifth brother, but is mortified to find Reva in the unfortunate state that she's in. There's very little color in her face, and she's cold to the touch. Kenobi's unsure how to help her, but Reva knows there's nothing that can be done. Realizing this, all Kenobi can think to do is hold her hand so she won't feel alone. However, Reva does have a final request. She wants Kenobi to use the Force again to help her regain more of her memories. He doesn't want to, given her weakened state, but Reva insists. I have nothing but pain to look back on. I just want to know that wasn't my entire life. Kenobi caves in and fulfills her request. The painful memories surface first, but Reva pushes past them. And then, everything goes dark. A new memory emerges. Young Reva is being escorted down a hall. She's nervous, but the Jedi escorting her holds her hand. They enter a room where other younglings are. Reva's introduced, and they're told that she is their new sister. The kids are hesitant at first, but then a young boy approaches and introduces himself. He takes Reva by the hand and introduces her to the rest of her new family. After that, a slew of memories arise, revealing joyful moments with her siblings. This was more than she ever expected, and the warmth of the memories was like nothing she'd ever experienced. There's nothing left for Kenobi to do. Originally, when I started this rewrite, I did go into it with the intent of killing Reva, and I still do stand by that decision. But I was debating near the end. I think I went a little too hardcore with her character, and I just wanted something positive with her. That's why I had her live a little unrealistically longer, which is still kinda a bit of a negative, but it was so she could have a positive end. I was considering having her live and Kenobi taking her under his wing. If the original ending I wrote is too much, then just switch it out with this alternate version. Rogan had taken all the other civilians to their desired destination, and now it was time for Leia. He's alerted that a ship is approaching but isn't concerned. Kenobi boards the ship and finds Leia sleeping. He gently wakes her, and while groggy, she's thrilled to see him. She asks where Reva is, and he somberly tells her that she's no longer in any pain. While disappointed to hear that, Leia has seen too much for this to be a shock. Rogan announces that it won't be too much longer. Kenobi sees that Leia is somewhat nervous and asks why. Everything's different. I'm different. What if I'm too different? Kenobi tries to console her, saying that while she has been through a lot, that will not change how her parents feel about her. Leia agrees, but explains that after everything she's seen, she's not sure if she can go back to just being a princess again. She also confesses that she's been having nightmares. Like I previously stated, a child in general would be scared shitless if put in the same situations Leia was in. And I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to say that there is some possibility of a child developing some form of PTSD as a result of these traumatic events. Kenobi asks how often she has them, and Leia unfortunately answers every time she closes her eyes. Kenobi sighs, realizing what he has to do. Before he does, he needs to know something first. I'm very sorry all this has happened to you. I wish things were different, but just because they're not, doesn't mean we're trapped by it. It will always be your choice. And if you had the choice right now, would you want to forget it ever happened? Not all of it. You, Tala, Roken, and even Reva. I just wish it wasn't so scary. Roken announces that they're approaching Alderaan. With not much time left, Kenobi asks Leia to close her eyes. She does as he asks, trusting him with all her heart. With a heavy heart, Kenobi performs the memory rub. He alters certain events, erases the truly painful ones, and removes himself. Senator Bell and his wife Bria eagerly wait as the tiny passenger emerges out of the ship. After what feels like months, parents and child are reunited. Roken watches from the ship. Bell waits for another to exit the ship, but Roken shakes his head. After that, he takes off with Kenobi sitting silently in the back. I don't know the specifications when it comes to the memory rub. I don't know if Kenobi knows the technique or if he's even aware of it. But that was the only thing that I found that could explain the most controversial question in this entire series. There's something else I want to address. In the show, when Kenobi arrives on Alderaan, Leia is obviously happy to see him, but she seems far more ecstatic to see Lola, and she even runs up to Lola and not Kenobi. What the fuck? When they parted ways, it was pretty clear that Leia did understand that there was a good chance Kenobi was not coming back. So instead of her being ecstatic to see him alive, she seems far more giddier to see her toy robot that can be replaced. Anyway, Kenobi is back on Tatooine and it feels like nothing ever happened. He's in town buying supplies and spots a young boy gazing at a toy speeder. He buys a toy for the boy. When Owen approaches, he's at first concerned when he sees the toy, but then he sees Kenobi walking away, and he respectfully allows Luke to keep it. Holy shit, it's finally over. I really did bite off more than I could chew with this project, but I'm really proud of myself for sticking it out and not delegating it to the sidelines. I feel that this series is kinda split in the middle. Without a doubt, all fans of Star Wars loves the character Kenobi and adores the actor Ian McGregor. With that said, I think what splits the fan base is the faithfulness or lack thereof that should connect this series to the very first film. I am aware that my rewrite is just as inconsistent, and if I'm being truthful, the events of this story won't ever properly line up to the events of the first Star Wars film. Another issue that I found was the inconsistency in the pacing. I talked about this briefly in episode 5. I personally believe had each episode's runtime been extended a little more, they could have just as easily gotten a cohesive story with just 5 episodes instead of 6. I think I can safely say that the show's biggest blunder was Reva's character. I know I rambled on about this character in this entire series, pointing out everything that I believed caused fans to greatly dislike this character. The unfortunate thing is, Reva was an interesting concept for a character. Had the creators allowed her to just be Sith evil, she could have without a doubt made a wonderful villain. But it's pretty clear that what the creators were wanting was a Kylo Ren substitute. There's nothing wrong with that, but the issue was that Reva was not given any redeeming qualities to balance out the crimes she committed. And that's on the writers. The irony is, even Kylo had weak moments, but Reva just wasn't allowed to have any.
There was this one scene where she did look emotionally vulnerable, but nothing came of it. Even when Vader was using the Force on her, I wasn't concerned for her character, nor did I feel sorry for her. Because a lot of it she did bring onto herself, which made it harder to sympathize with her character. Which is a reoccurring issue with characters labeled strong female protagonist. And I believe every YouTuber has made a video about this issue at some point or another. I've heard rumors that her character might be getting a series of her own. I assume it would be about her redeeming herself. If this turns out to be true, I can tell you just how badly they screwed up, if that was always the plan. Even though I'm not necessarily a Star Wars fan, I did enjoy this series to an extent, and I have no doubt that despite the debates, fans did appreciate the show to an extent as well. I don't know if my version was any better, worse, or just mid. Like always, I appreciate any input, and again, thank you so much for watching till the end. Please like and subscribe!